The Butterfly's Dream by Kerberos 314, Chapter 32, Biblicus, Part 2. This is nice, right? Several short yells prompting just as many thrusts, the weightless sounds of a blade whooshing through the air, as well as the heavy sound of meaty resistance. Just the four of us, finally getting some team practice in before the tournament. Several cracks, a whip, and gunshots simultaneously, sharp and hollow both, pinging ricochets off rock like the school bells they had left far behind. No classes, no tests, no heist, no white fang, no drama. Slap as flesh met flesh, as flesh met metal, and crackling of bone caving, punctuating, blast of a shotgun ringing out like thunder from a gray cloud past approaching. Are any of you listening to me? A grunt of effort as Yang stopped a charging Barbatusk, easily 6 times her size, hands on its namesake and heel planted in the ground. She arrested its movement. Deciding that simply killing them was not much of a challenge, she faced the beast mano a mano, or whatever the word for tusk was, with a primal cry that had several lesser beasts turning their heads in attention. She flipped the monster on its back and delivered a thorough punch to its exposed throat, collapsing the windpipe. Still able enough to squeal in pain, she didn't stop hitting until it couldn't. Sorry, blowing a stray lock out of her face, Yang stood back up and used her blackened hand to pick at her ear. You say something? Hm, barbarian, Weiss scoffed without any venom, dispatching a beowulf that was attempting to sneak up behind her when she wasn't looking. She too was not feeling the effort of slaying these inferior grim, and was honestly trying to strike up a conversation because she could, because she was that bored. At least that's what she told herself, what she was trying to convince herself of. Would you rather be doing something exceedingly stupid and dangerous? Sarcasm easily detected behind a voice that was barely a winded. Blake landed on point after an airborne parade which succeeded in plucking 3 adolescent nevermore out of the sky. I for one am glad that we haven't run into any complications yet, adding the last part after her partner shot a look of upset across the glen. I know, easy job close to home, excellent compensation. Can you believe Osmond just handed us this choice mission, gushing both approval and ice from a glyph beneath her feet? No, Yang said simply, as simple as her fist reaching out and blasting a feline grim trying to pounce on her. No, I can't. Weiss looked ready to protest, but instead snapped her open mouth with a click that was audible in the relative silence of the aftermath. Yeah, I guess you're right. Taking the breather to look out at the dark and imposing woods, which even now felt like a mere cardboard backdrop. The mission was ranked high priority, even if it was posted a few weeks ago, supposedly good, which allowed us to take it because we're the most experienced of the first years. But even if she or Ospen wanted to give us a break after the last one, I don't think either one would fiddle with the mission parameters like that. One mistake could cost the less competent team their career or their lives. With this thought, Yang suddenly whipped around, searching. Where's Ruby? Over there. Blake jerked her thumb lazily towards a copious activity being filled by something quite large and destructive. Having fun by the sound of it. What looked like a tornado of crimson leaves suddenly drilled into the grass ahead of them, dissipating to reveal a hooded and crouched hunter still with her borrowed sword strapped to her back. Before anyone had time to comment on this, a tidal wave of destruction came barreling through the bramble, knocking aside the woods like a curtain of beads as it hobbled in all its titanic glory. Crashing to a halt, the Alpha Beringen stood up to its full height, easily topping the trees, and beat an earth-shaking roar from its chest. The cry gave them goosebumps, rattling the leaves and branches and knocked at the birds from their nests, but did not succeed in so much as ruffling the warrior's cloak. She did not even move when the arm smashed into the ground with all the force of a locomotive. Petals and wool swirled about her. She reappeared on its shoulder, a strike already flying towards his eye, clenched in irritation. From the airborne debris, it might as well have been a mosquito from what things looked like on the ground, but true to this analogy, where once there had been but one annoying gnat, suddenly there were dozens swarming the beast all over, and the petals flew through the air like rain in a typhoon, mouths agape as if they were trying to catch those falling flowers like snowflakes. Her team watched this incredible happening with the feelings that they were in a shared dream. The smell wafting from the gorilla creature's mouth quickly dissuaded them of this, while at the same time cursing her olfactory senses. Blake's enhanced abilities did allow her to pick out another detail to better illuminate the confounding battle. She's not duplicating herself. Amber eyes plucked the details from the darkness, witnessing the displacement of the petals moving in chaotic currents back and forth, trapping in an invisible container. She's simply moving that fast. There was nothing simple about it. Her teammates no doubt thought, after images the eyes could hardly track, blinked in and out of existence around the Alpha like embers from a firework, each one singing just a little more of its flesh. It bellowed and writhed in protest of this pestering like mosquito that was rapidly sucking it dry of every ounce of restraint it had left, swiping to and fro at everywhere and everything, and then nothing. Ruby had vanished. Then, like a weed that sprouted out of this confused beast's head, the hooded figure rose up from the back of its neck, with an open hand raised to the moon, seemingly trying to wrangle the individual pieces and bring down the entirety of their wrath on her enemy. In a way, it could be said that that is what happened. When her hand touched the beast's mask, it shattered indignantly to the lunar sphere, and with no horizon to hold it aloft, the pieces went everywhere, the flesh as black as night, dissolving into nothingness, dispelling the dream. Padding up to her team, caught them between bemusement and awe. Ruby lowered her cowl and shook the stray twigs which had gotten caught in her hair. Crocea Morse weighing uncomfortably on her back. She adjusted the leather strap, which was way too long, and gave a lopsided grin. Glad to see someone's having fun. Even out evening out her smile, she turned to her partner. I'm making do. Light words, reckless actions, and flippant tone were for the benefit of others, while inside she still sat perched on the balls of her feet, never quite relaxed from the tension which prickled on her skin. It might have been this feeling which allowed her to accept her friend's weapon, made her doubt even now that things would be easy enough for her bare hands alone, while yet there was that foreboding like a creeping fog. Where were all the grim? There, where were the complications, the danger? Their luck was never this good. A trip across the elemental nations, while not typical, was accomplished routinely. Nothing about either Naruto or Ruby was routine, however, and the fact that nothing had happened on either front was a sure a sign as any that something big was about to go down. Call it pessimism, but even if it weren't in the back of his mind, he would have noted something off. Confident that he was unbiased by Ruby's situation, he had to agree that the feeling was similar. Direction felt aimless. The scenery, which was whizzed by now by no more than a hand-painted backdrop for an elaborate production, it almost felt like a genjutsu. And if he were not so confident in the no, Kurama's abilities to dispel it, he would have sat down in a field and tried himself until he succeeded. However futile that might have been, futile as well as keeping his thoughts solely on this suspicion, he had confidence the Kuma shinobi were on his side. Even before he removed that factor from the atmosphere, he had suspected that Kaori wouldn't want to do him in, hence why he stood by his prior decision. It was the same innate confidence which he entrusted his tenant, his partner, for even if their bond was restrained, it would not be so if it weren't still there. In the wake of this mantra he kept repeating to himself, there was only silence. Rather, there had been. On your left, the barking growl gave him enough time to deploy his scythe and take up a defensive position while in mid-leap. No time even to land, though, as his attacker burst forth from the canopy to strike him while he couldn't maneuver. Maybe he could have, if he had been more aware. Fool, he shouldn't have been so easily surprised. It was his second time staring into the mouth of this creature after all. Radiant Thorn braced in front, staving off two fangs of equal menace as the giant viper lashed out at him. It slammed him into a tree, plummeting through that and back into the open air where the highly intelligent creature recoiled slightly, allowing it to try again in swallowing its prey. Jaws of incalculable pressure snapped shut around nothing, popping out atop its scaled head. Naruto skated up the spine, hooking the tip under those scales. He dragged his weapon behind him like a hoe, ripping up armor plating and causing the beast to howl in anger. Dispelling before it could sustain any more damage, the summon retreated back to its home in a fog bank of smoke. Naruto fell now with nothing to hold him aloft once again. susceptible then to the attack which came from the giant blonde spot. The fourth Hokage, his father, was quoted as being the fastest man alive. Some said the fastest in history, bar none, until him, that is, mastering the motives of this speed, he never ceased to push that border past every barrier, past the clock, past sound, past sight, past himself, though never more than his other, he admitted, proud and chagrined both, never as fast as he wanted, which would allow him to turn back the clock and leapfrog all his mistakes before they happened, go back to when that sword wasn't sticking out of his abdomen, just underneath the armor plating of his flak vest. Cuckoo, long time no see, Naruto-kun. Even with that inhabiting pinning him to the tree, he tried to lash out at the snake sunning, side swung with one hand at that pale face with its cancerous smile. Orochimaru lazily leaned back, tongue still wrapped around the hilt of Kusanagi. He even had the gall to chuckle at the attempt before he restrained the appendage with the tangle of serpents, the boy's other hand with the kunai through the palm. Oh my, that's quite impressive. Wormy fingers fondling the neat incision his sword had created, hardly even bleeding yet as the metal steamed the wound. You were such a vocal brat when we last met. You've matured quite nicely, I'd say. Fingernails slipped underneath flesh, prying and probing into his gut, as if he were trying to manually extract his tailed beast. Amazing! Not a scream, not even a cry, just that lovely look. Bloody hand extracted, he cupped Naruto's chin, straining those whisker marks so that he could better gaze into the boy's hateful stare. Closer he pressed his insidious visage, delving into those blue oceans to swarm in the wrath that they held. I wonder what precipitated this maturity. What changed? Your trip with the toad? A fight? The loss of a loved one? Could be, could be. You see, Naruto, no one changes without cause. I suppose you might call it a hobby for me to guess the causes for attitudes in humans. Everything else is far too easy, but humans are something magical. Something caused Naruto's eyes to flick to the side, and the snake followed them, not before flicking his wrist to the right to unleash another writhing mass of serpents, which quickly sought out this disturbance to his fun. The lightning bolt came from the left, though, blasting its way towards the missing Nin, who stood with his back turned in total calm. Just as it was about to impact, though, it dispersed in spiderweb tendrils, going every which way around the man and his prisoner. The reason because became obvious as the Faraday cage of steel wire around him burst and crackled with the strain of electric potential running through it. Orochimaru of the Sannin, interrupting his evil villain monologue, were Naruto's escorts, a little late but not unprepared. You see, just like this, speaking to Naruto, he continued, unfettered by this intrusion. You have this ability of changing things far more than should be possible, not just things, but people. Don't ignore us. Kairi appeared to be by his side, sword already halfway to home in its swing, not breaking his staring contest with the pin blonde. Orochimaru removed his sword to block the Kumo Kunoichi strike. Coo. Good try. Not very wise, though. He indicated Naruto, who was now only being held up by the kunai in his palm and the knot of snakes around the other stomach wound flowing freely. I was under the impression that you had reconciled, or did I give the boy too much credit? I think you give us too little. The cold reply came as Sarui's blade severed the serpentine bindings, allowing Naruto to jerk his now free arm to the last remaining obstacle. His hand was already on the ring when Kairi's sword pierced his wrist, pinning both to the tree. Naruto let out a cry that was both anguish and frustration as the redhead stood on the branch in mute horror, her wrist wrapped up in the unnatural prehensile tongue of the Sannin which forced her to make the blow. Her shock lasted until it was struck violently from her face, stomach caving in, and air forced out of her lungs through her tips. She was sent careening right towards where Omui was trying to sneak up and rescue the principal. Kusanagi blocked along the snake's spine, stanching Samui's strike as his tongue whipped Katori's dropped blade around to force the Kumo ninja to back off. This wasn't the extent of it, however, as the tongue released the weapon to allow a torrent of flame to slide along it, expanding into a dragon, which engulfed both the blonde and the entire quarter of the woods which faced them. I think you'll find I am a very good judge of character. Orochimaru laughed, turning back to his captive, who was going at the kunai with his teeth, unable to give up. He smiled cruelly at this sight, which is why I am so confounded by you, Naruto-kun. Grabbing a fistful of blonde hair, he pulled the boy's ear back close to his mouth, where he began to speak hot and fast. Unwittingly or otherwise, you have stymied my goals time and again. I wonder to this day what you said to Sasuke-kun to change his mind. All of my vast knowledge has shown that people don't evolve on words alone. They need a life-changing, maybe even, shall we say, otherworldly experience. Naruto stopped struggling, his bile rising to through his throat and into his heart as a desperate fear and hatred overcame his consecutively. Cuckoo, you see, a little birdie left me a very interesting note. Now, not only was the source itself a surprise, but what it contained was so amazing as to be unbelievable. So, naturally, I had to go and see for myself. Now, I think I'm convinced, but I still need to find out. The urgent meal kick that the youth sent out was easily intercepted, Orochimaru binding his legs with his own. What sort of things are going on inside your head? Another world, another whole universe of experiences? Imagine other worlds, so much knowledge, so much to live for. Fuck you, creep! So busy restraining his captive, Orochimaru couldn't extract himself in time when he, the tree, and the boy pinned to it were torn to shreds by a torrent of wind flooding the woods. So thick it was like a deluge, the spiteful fluid eradicating everything in its path, shoving trees aside like blades of grass, and carving a new riverbed for far at the base. Naruto landed next to it on the ground, panting as he picked his way to his weapon, which was still embedded tip down into the earth. Hand poised about the gnarled handle, his eyes widened and he jerked back as if stung. The slight curve at the end, which served for added leverage, turned into a hand which reached out to grab him. Jabbing his thumb into the very real but shallow stomach wound, he dispelled the illusion just in time to feel a pair of hands grabbing him by his ankles and drag him down. He flashed back to his scythe and with a flick of his wrist tore up another furrow towards the burrowing shinobi. A white snake burst forth before the blade of compression wind could uproot it, and it lunged at Naruto. Using the same Hiraishin kunai he planted earlier to escape the near fatal stab, he appeared behind the snake and threw his weapon in an attempt to behead the creature. The fact that he succeeded in doing so was more surprising than when another snake shot out of the gullet of the other, slithering off and disappearing into the trees. Quickly flickering back over to Radiant Thorn, he summarily let loose a handful of his special tagged kunai, seemingly at random into the woods. Uzumaki, happy to dodge one of these weapons, a rearmed Kaoru jumped down into the small and recent clearing, followed shortly by her other teammates. Just what the fuck was that? Naruto cocked his head. Which part? Stifling her teammate's sputtering attempt to form a rational sentence with a hand on her shoulder, Samui spoke for her allies. Why don't we start with Orochimaru and go from there? He shrugged, not opposed to even if had been more of a command than question. Don't know why he's here now, but he wants something from me. Samui narrowed her eyes in suspicion. Your tailed beast? Not surprised in the least that they knew. He still had to shake his head. I don't think so. Orochimaru was in Akatsuki at one point, but with most of their members dead, I don't think he'd go after me just to appease a dead organization. Then what? I wanna know how you're still alive. Also, why'd you try and skewer me? All it took to remind the incensed redhead that she had in fact stabbed him and tried to once before was a deadpan stare which cowered her until Omui broke the silence. It was a blood clone, wasn't it? Breaking the stare much to Karuri's relief, Naruto nodded. Hmm, I've heard the rumor that you could use those. I'm getting better at holding them for longer, but it takes a lot out of me. Will you be all right? The team leader asked, prompting Naruto to look out into the woods. Better question if you guys are. It's not over. While there had been some clarification for the rapid-fire series of events, time for the Q&A was over, and everyone realized it soon enough to scatter when an eruption of flame and mud spewed from the ground beneath them. I really have to hand it to you, Naruto-kun. Stepping out of the spout of the mud volcano, Orochimaru looked only slightly worse for wear, and their bias was only because of the sparse patches of scales on face and hands gave him a more sickly reptilian look than he already sported. You are infinitely more devious than I gave you credit for, although A flash of light passed, bisecting the man to reveal a mud clone. The white snake pounced from the canopy to tear into a tree, swallowing with the wood one of the sealed kunai planted there, nearly also nabbing its owner, who had to quickly flash to another to avoid the same fate. Perhaps you have always, perhaps you have always been this deceptive. The snake hissed, coiling contentedly around the trunk of a chewed-up tree as the top part began to list, breaking off a snap during which it lunged at him again. You kept this a secret for your entire life, never trusting anyone. What seemed like a flick of its tail sent an ancient arbor careening towards him, which Naruto also treated with little effort. How very smart. You never knew when someone is going to betray that trust. Then again, isn't always within human nature to fail. Should we not expect it to happen sooner or later? Fear, after all, is which is within each of us. And what do people fear more than what they do not understand? You have really shit bad guy banter, you know that? Naruto snarked, talking big out of habit. Already the insufficient thought made him wonder if he could trust on his partner to back him up this time, and if he could defeat Orochimaru without him. First of all, you can hardly speak for any of us humans. I mean, look at you. Secondly, you have no idea what's going on inside my head, and I think that gives me the advantage. Sliding on its stomach, flittering in and out of trees, the snake suddenly disappeared, and Naruto felt instinct jerk his arm upwards just as the blade of Kusanigami descended upon him. Radiant Thorn batted the small blade away, only for an elegant snake to take its place, sharp fangs attempting to skewer him. Aiming and missing with the butt of his scythe, he backpedaled until he was up against a tree, ready to sprint either way, or even to flash out of harm's way if necessary. But Orochimaru returned his neck to its usual place and reassured calmly, walking towards him, stopping well short. Really, Naruto-kun, it's hurtful that you don't think me of a human. Appearances, as you know, can be deceiving. I hear words, but you'd be better off stuffing a hamster in it because it's all gibberish. Really, if you think about it, I am the most human out of both of us. I recognize my flaws, my mortality, which is why I wish to surmount them. But never have I desired anything but a human world, one of hate, jealousy, compassion, love, all the little reactions which make us who we are, unlike you, who wishes to change all that, decrease anyone who can't meet up to your standards or perfection. Isn't that right? Nope. No. Orochimaru was both taken aback and amused. That's it. Nope. A manic grin threatened to slip his face. As in, snakes are nope rope, and that means anything about you is just a big ol' nope. Coo coo coo. Such an amusing insult, but you think of that one all by yourself, or did she help you? With a simple curling of the lips, that Cheshire smile became a tiger snarl as Hercules raised the jagged red spikes of energy from his bristling skin. Who told you? Dancing around the topic for so long, he could still assume it wasn't that. He could still deny it, pretend he hadn't heard right. Who do you think? At yet this thing wanted to keep playing the game, keep torturing him. We would show him. No, wait, just a minute, just a second. He doesn't deserve to live. Mustn't fall to his bait. Naruto, listen, no, speak. Don't let my chakra influence you. You're still you. I'm not. Hatred breeds hatred to a fearsome downward spiral. Truly, humans bring out the best and the worst in everyone. Thankfully, one caught it before it was too late. I hear ya. Restraint forcing that red energy like sea urchin spines into something akin to a shaggy carpet. Kurama, seeing that he needed to push more, Orochimaru dared to take a step forward to draw on his still present heightened emotions, and continue talking. Who do you think betrayed you? It would be interesting to peruse through your deepest suspicions, but maybe it would be easier to think it through logically. I care little for that inhuman beast in your stomach, as only something less than a curiosity, but some fear it, some would view it as a dangerous thing to keep around, especially with as many questions about your mental health which might arise should certain facts slip. Now I wonder who deals with that sort of thing, the mental health of shinobi, secrets that could potentially compromise a powerful Jinchuriki. He should have listened to his partner and not listened to this maniacal conspirator. but inside there was a part of him he knew wanted this, wanted to confirm the worst he had suspected all along, a hypocritical urge, indulgent in that self-harming mistrust for all the failings he had made. Doesn't it seem strange that you would be left all alone with the three shinobi from another nation, one of whom hates you with every fiber of her being? Not only that, but the most wanted man in the elemental nations was able to track you down so easily without any resistance. Weird, isn't it? How they were not here now to protect you, or, I guess, it doesn't seem as strange, not if you just make one measly little concession. Shut up! Occam's razor, have you ever heard of it? I imagine they have their own version in other worlds because it is an immutable principle of truth. All things being equal, the simplest answer tends to be the right one, which was simpler, though, assuming the others and Kurama were misleading him, or assuming he was deluding himself. On second thought, keep talking. This world, this world of this world of conspiracies that we have woven for yourself, held together simply by bits of string. What? I said, keep talking. Planting the head of Radiant Thorn on the ground, he leaned on the haft as the cloak around him became more literal, flowing calm and liquid rather than the near explosion it once was. This is just getting good. You're going to tell me now it was Jiraiya. Oh, or better yet, Granny Tsunade, who sold me out, right? To you, of all people, right? He burst out laughing, a sound which disseminated through the tree and parted around the palpable ire of the snake Sanin, who stood there as if all this were expected, bar a slight twitch in his jaundiced eye. For someone with so much knowledge, how does it feel to be so stupid? Naruto asked with a smile that was halfway a snarl, split right down the middle. To learn, to plan, to think you know the right answers, and then to be so wrong. A ripple ran over that liquid shroud, precursors to a storm, and Orochimaru felt the chill from it. If people like you are human, then I guess I don't feel at home in this world anymore. The surface became choppy, waves coupling into a tail, two, three. If that's the case, then I'll just have to clean it up, or at the worst, raise it to the ground and start over, because this is my home, and I got guests coming over soon. Doing a magnificent job of pretending that all was still going according to his plan, the snake watched himself be surrounded by the Kumo shinobi with his characteristic unflappable demeanor. He had even prepared a water jutsu to absorb the electrical attacks launched simultaneously from the three points of the triangle, ready to slip away under the resulting cloud of a steam vapor. In the snake's mind, however, there was never any possibility of failure. There was no way this upstart little runt could foil him when he put his mind to it, and to the very last it is surely what he believed, illustrating that even if he could shed his skin time and again, his rigid mind could not evolve to keep pace with the changing world. That imperturbable expression shattered like the ground underneath his feet when a crimson claw burst forth and crushed him, his body deforming like putty underneath the awesome pressure. Like a balloon animal he burst, though, and from the shredded husk poured hundreds of serpents slithered between the fingers of another half dozen claws emerging from beneath to capture them. Naruto cursed the man's slyness, even as his escorts made busy by trying to exterminate all the individual targets, which quickly darted back into the underbrush. Apologize, Uzumaki. Samui spoke for her team, realizing marvel-sized balls of lightning from her fingers. We are delayed by his mud clones. Uh, this uh, guy, this guy is pretty hard to kill. I see why he is considered so dangerous. He must plan very far ahead, Omui commented while using his own electrical skills imbued into his sword to fell another dozen snakes with a single blow. That's just another way to say he doesn't know when to give up. Careful not to chase the serpents too far from her group, Katori settled for picking off the stragglers one by one with her sword as they slithered between her feet. Why the hell is he being so damn stubborn anyway? What the hell does he want from you? That's something personal. Simply waiting for the next phase to begin, Naruto stood prepared and vigilant for the forest around them. Like hell, silenced with a non-negotiable hand from her superior, Kaori and Omui fell into a loose formation next to one another at Samui's silent command, while the Jonin moved closer to her ward. Everyone is allowed to keep secrets, especially Shinobi. She shot the younger blonde a look out of the corner of her eye. Reasons should not affect our ability to perform our duty. Cold yet comforting, truth yet still a lie. He had little doubt the crazed Sanin would love to dissect him, given the chance, but the brash redhead raised the point with his determination. There was but one thing Naruto could think of which would be worth dying for, again and again. Two somethings rather, locked within a seal he kept over his heart, but Orochimaru shouldn't know about that, couldn't know about that, as he had been ever so careful when taking them. Even if he hadn't exactly understood their power, it was the word of his partner, and he had no choice but to trust it. I do not know this, things motives, but whatever happens, you must not let him have them. Believe me when I say there is a reason, just as I asked you to take them in the first place. Faith is blind. That's what makes it so easy to trip over and break. This is becoming boring. A good match needs competitors willing to participate. Fraction voices echoed all around them from the shadows. Let's change the game, shall we? Sami was quick to cover Naruto, who was able enough to fend for himself when Root shot out of the both of them and descended from the canopy like a cage. A vermilion pedestal shot the two skyward and allowed Naruto to prune the branches before they could so much as touch them. Since when did the Sani have the ability to perform Mokuton? In another time, Naruto might have been happy to see a chink in the cold woman's jaded exterior, but he too was disturbed and upset by the recent development, not given a chance to think about it for so long. However, as a gust of wind smacked into them and threatened to tear them apart before the Kumo Nin could perform a lightning technique to mitigate the gale, Naruto reached out to flash the both of them to the ground where the gust was but a breeze. He's trying to separate us. The moment the teen had grabbed her hand, struck an epiphany on Samui's head, and she immediately scanned the area to look for her other two teammates. Coo. Well, perhaps willing isn't exactly the right word, dripping with irony and malice, as well as the small trickle of blood that flowed from Kaori's neck from where the edge of Kusanagi pressed against her jugular. But then again, this is still a test for you, Naruto-kun, and this girl here is merely a means to an end. Bastard, she hissed, as the blade pressed a little further into her chocolate skin, exposing a soft pink flesh underneath. Ah. Pieces can't talk, the snake warned even as he regarded her quivering hands, still clasping her blade with amusement. So, let's find out how much she is worth, and in doing so, what makes you tick? Someone you hardly even know who holds such animosity. I have a suspicion that even then you would waste your life on someone like this, but that's truly what's at stake here, is it? So, how about it? Are you willing to sacrifice both of you? How many more? Not just a single world to lay on the balance right now, and I will give you the choice to pick one with the added bonus of this girl if you can give me a satisfactory answer. A heavy and ethereal wind billowing at his living shroud. I oscillated between fanning the flames and putting them out as he struggled with his inner choice. Unfair choice. The handle of radiant thorn strained under his grip, the otherworldly metal refusing to give even then. Uzumaki, Samui sustained urgently. I don't understand whatever nonsense he's talking about, but you can't believe him. He's not going to let Karui go. You understand that, right? Not taking her eyes off her comrade, she pressed an involuntary wince as the Sanin dug a finger into her back, trying to force the woman of her own volition against the sword. Defiant of both kinds of pressure being put on her, the woman gnawed her teeth and bore through it. Tick tock! She's not going to be able to tell you what you think, so what's your answer? You're insane, Naruto said, himself not looking away from the panic obstinance locked in her eyes. I fully admit that I'm weird and different, but I still have no bloody idea what you're talking about. So predictable, Orochimaru lamented with only the barest hints of actual disappointment. I guess in the end, you aren't really that different. Fear still dictates your actions, but with all the experience you should know by now you will lose everything. I promise that I will take it from you piece by piece, your friends, your demon, your soulmate, but not before the Rinnegan you have sealed away in your chest, which I will use to accomplish it all, to remind you that it was all your fault and you could have prevented it from the beginning. Abruptly the Sanin cut off, as if noticing for the first time something particularly perplexing, his face stricken with the curiosity which belied the blade which pierced to him through the heart. You're not Kaori formed a shaky hand seal, reserving her strength from keeping her words steady, along with her sword, which plunged through her stomach and up until villain. Someone like you is not even worth my contempt. With that said, the man was shocked quite literally, as what must have been tens of thousands of amps coursed through the blade which connected them. Blackish, Kaori feeling little backlash from her own technique, as only small tendrils leapt off his frying carcass and singeing her, as if this had been the plan all along. The other two rushed the man and launched their own coordinated attack. Omui's water jutsu enhancing the lingering charge and knocking the man away from his teammate. Rather than go for a killing blow, which probably wouldn't work anyway, Samui targeted Kusanagi, severing the bond between it and its master by the wrist and kicking both blade and hand far away towards Naruto, who remained flabbergasted. Kaori, about to rush towards the downed Kunoichi, who was carefully even when falling to make sure she did not exaggerate her self-inflicted injury. Naruto was intercepted by Saori, who had replied her fearsome disposition. Leave her to us. Yeah, despite how it looks, she's not dumb enough to hit anything vital. Oi, you almost stabbed my toe. Yeah, well, that's not vital, is it? Kaori hissed, leaning on the kunai she had lashed out with at Omui's foot, the other hand stabilizing the sword running up through her body and narrowly missing her spine. Go Uzumaki, even when lacking authority, her order carried immense weight. It's clear you will just hold you back. Reimburse us by finishing this. Not heeding to be told twice, a resurgence of energy exploded out of him as he took off in a rosy flash, catching only a single parting word amidst the hypocritic crack. Baka, who said it was lost, who it was meant for didn't matter. They all were all fools, time and life making them so. None more so than him. But he wouldn't have it any other way. Orochimaru, on the other hand, his time was up long ago. A single swing of his weapon swept across the ground, felling everything that stood between it in a crimson arc, like the minute hand on a clock. He caught the form of the white snake darting through the falling jacks to avoid getting crushed like the worm he was. Following the pull of one of his Horizon kunai planted earlier, he flashed onto a massive trunk already toppled 45 degrees, and right underneath the reptilian sodding. Still eyes glanced back at him, but it was because the monster knew it could escape, disappearing into the ground the moment he flitted out of sight. Naruto hadn't managed to replenish his ration tags since fighting Pain, and begrudgingly admitted that he would be outpaced at a flat-out race. Snakes were nothing but muscle anyway, and he was sure that with the biological enhancements the Sicko had already made on himself, that his form was the pinnacle of physiology. He wouldn't win a battle of attrition with body flicker. Taking this frustration, this feeling of impotence and uselessness, he turned it on its head like he did with everything. If he couldn't catch up to the slippery snake, he would make it come to him. It was with great reluctance he would admit being thankful to Jiraiya for at least one thing. It had been the pervert who revealed to him the incomplete status of the Rasengan, as even Kurama hadn't known. Not a whole lot of time had been devoted to finishing his father's technique, but the first step was all he would need. But better late than never, with his partner helping to isolate and mold his wind nature chakra. It was a simple matter to imbue it to a performed Rasengan. Slightly harder to move it through the shaft of his scythe, but the metal seemed accepting enough of the energy and allowed it to flow freely, desperating the drilling to a fan blade. The only thing left was power, which he had in abundance. He closed his eyes better to concentrate on maintaining the man-made tornado, and because it was so large he couldn't see past it anyway. Besides, he could feel what was going on inside his personal wind tunnel, every bit of debris being picked up and being smashed to bits against the side. That bloody spiral must have eclipsed the sky like a sunset, brought a little bit of remnant to the elemental nations as it turned a lowland of lightning country into forever fall for all of 3 minutes. It was all he could maintain. Even with the extra chocolate flowing through him, his body couldn't handle the strain as soon after using it before. Thankfully, it had been enough. Before he even released the technique, the great white snake lunged through the gale force winds, unbidden by its scales being torn off and shattered branches pelting it, its sides solely on the blonde nuisance. No, Naruto was far beyond a nuisance. He was a problem child. He managed to cut straight through the Rashomon gate summoned to intercept his prepared blow, but it was enough of a delay for the white snake to skirt around and attack the boy's unguarded side. Reminiscent of that griffin oh so long ago, Naruto wedged her radiant thorn between the jaws of the beast, learning from Ruby's juvenile mistake as well as his own. He didn't try to struggle with the physically stronger opponent, and instead leapt onto its neck again again in an imitation of her, just an older her which recently slew an alpha Berengel. That was where the similarities ended, lacking the speed semblance as well as the serenity from an easy kill. He stuck his foot down to the creature and unloaded everything he had. Twirling spiral in each hand, he drilled into the beast's back, hoping to plunge into his most coveted brain. In another life, he might have simply been content to leave the deranged Sanin alone, but he had decided to mess with his precious people, and that was unacceptable in Naruto's book. This was the change Orochimaru was looking for, the cause which made Naruto turn the situation on its head and become the predator rather than the prey. Seeking reason in real life, as has been stated, can be a futile endeavor. Sometimes things just happen. Therefore, when the tables turned yet again, and the serpent shed its skin underneath his twin drills, it was almost with boredom that he regarded the now eight-headed snake staring hungrily down at him. The Hydra-like creature, easily dwarfing its predecessor and rivaling the stature of boss-level summons, hardly earning more than a cocked eyebrow and seriously, coo. Whereas in the guise of a man, the laughter was creepy. Here it was just, well, creepier. I am surprised that you managed to make me reveal this form, Naruto-kun. Very well, I shall honor you with my glorious visage before I make good on my promise. Oh, come on, can't you say anything original? This is pretty much a verbatim extraterrestrial monster hunter part 4. I was going to let you live your amusing existence a little while longer to see what you did with this quirk you have obtained, continuing to ignore what to him sounded like nonsense. The 4 by King Taijutsu blathered on. But now I think you are perhaps a little too dangerous to let live. Too bad about that. I would have loved to see what sort of derangement existed in your head, not to mention the loss of the Rinnegan will be tragic. Oh well, I will settle for the Sharingan as planned though, although I suppose I am surprised that he told the truth about your abilities. The last part intrigued Naruto a little, but he was more fixated on the fact that it wasn't quite like the comic he referred to. No power-up was coming in form of a random comet from deep space, nor would it be wise to rely on the power inside of him, which would be just as likely to dissolve him from the inside out as help him against eternal threats. Orochimaru was right about one thing. He wouldn't subject Ruby to that kind of torture, even if he would gladly take on all that pain himself redoubled. But he was also all out of ideas. Retreat sounded like a perfectly reasonable option at this point. The familiar tug of his remaining Hiraishin kunai was just a little too far away, a little too much time to concentrate on its presence and the back of his head. The effort of trying to distracted him enough for 4 of the 8 heads to surround him on all sides, elemental attacks of lightning, wind, water, and fire forming in the gaping mouth of each. Well, shoot! While it wasn't the meteor that saved him, deliverance did come from the sky in the form of 4 needle-like swords envisioned as holy lightning descending to smite the front of humanity. They nailed the jaw of each snake shut, allowing the swelling energy to be released in an enclosed container, aka the heads of which erupted in a concert of seasons over his head. Hey, hey, little Reaper, don't you worry about no creeper. With effortless coordination which belied his massive form, a large dark-skinned man fell from the heavens, grabbing his weapons as they were blasted towards him. He alighted with ridiculous grace next to Naruto, just as he collapsed onto a knee. Man, you ain't looking so hot, so why don't you let me give it a shot? I'll take this snake down right, 'cause man, I know you, and we be tight. Comfortable in the ridiculousness of the situation, he met the smile of the man and tried to meet his eyes behind the dark shades he was wearing. I honestly have no idea who you are or what you're saying. Tiredly, he gave an apologetic smile, but I still think I can trust you. For even if he didn't know for certain, there was that familiar feeling creeping up again, the one which worms its way insidiously into our hearts before poisoning our minds. He realized he loved the man, a brother that he had never met before. In the meantime, the so-claimed ultimate form of Orochimaru had recovered the eviscerated heats, even regenerating with startling efficiency. And whatever you can do would be greatly appreciated. Don't worry, little Jinjuriki, just leave everything to me. Juggling the swords that he just caught along with another four, the man suddenly took off far faster than a man of his size had any right to move. Appearing next to the monster snake, he began his assault, attacking in what looked to be part unnatural psychicity and part epileptic seizure. He juggled his 8 swords between limbs, teeth, and what seemed to be feet at one point. It was too fast to even tell from where he sat, despite the oddness of the moves, striking crippling blows to the creature, which nevertheless shrugged them off. Just sit back and be prepared to say "we," because no one beats the one, the only, the killer bee. That's me, fool, you fool. This apparent invisibility didn't seem to bother the killer bee, and so Naruto didn't let it bug him either. He was too tired anyway. In reality, he had been tired for a long while, and it was only now that his burdens seemed lifted from his shoulders did he allow himself to realize it. So, while Killer Bee emphatically took on Naruto's challenge in his stead, the young man himself leaned up against one of the few remaining trees and watched the demeanor of violence with drooping eyelids. Vaguely he was aware of the other Kumo shinobi coming up next to him, of more streaming down from the mountains in the background like ants. He just didn't care. People he believed in were on his side, and he just couldn't bring himself to care otherwise. End of chapter 32.